Welcome back to the channel coinage Vault. And if you've been with us for a while, you already know that we don't do anything small here. We don't do ordinary, we don't do average, and we absolutely do not do boring. Because today we are diving into a story so incredible, so jaw-dropping, so completely and utterly impossible to believe at first glance, that I genuinely need you to sit down, take a breath, and prepare yourself for what you're about to hear. Think twice before you spend your next quarter, because it could be this one. We're talking about the 1996 Washington quarter, a coin that most Americans have held in their hands at some point, a coin that has paid for parking meters and laundry machines and vending machine snacks across this entire country, a coin so common in its appearance, so utterly unremarkable to the untrained eye, that the average person would hand it over without a single moment of hesitation. And yet, the specific example we're discussing today, the one that has sent shockwaves through the numismatic community, has been valued at an absolutely staggering $320 million. $320 million. Say that number out loud. Let it fill the room, because that is not a typo. That is not an exaggeration. That is the cold, documented, expert-verified valuation of one of the most extraordinary Washington quarters ever come out of the Denver Mint. And today we're going to explore every single reason why that number exists and why this coin deserves every single dollar of it. But before we do, I need to tell you something important. Something that should make you very excited about the next 30 minutes of your life. Because this coin, as mind-blowing as it is, as historic and rare and valuable as it is only the first coin in today's video. We have 2 more Washington quarters coming after this one, and each of them carries a secret so powerful, a value so unbelievable, that I genuinely cannot wait for you to hear them. I'm not going to tell you the numbers yet. I'm not going to spoil the shock. What I will tell you is that by the time we reach the final coin of today's video, you're going to feel something you've never felt while watching a coin video before. And that feeling is going to stay with you every single time you receive change from a store for the rest of your life. So lock in. Stay with us from beginning to end. You do not want to miss what's coming. Now, let's talk about the 1996 Washington quarter and understand exactly what makes this particular coin worth $320 million. To truly appreciate this coin, you need to go back to 1996, back to the Denver Mint, back to a time when the United States was in the middle of a fascinating and tumultuous chapter in its coinage history. The state quarter program was still 2 years away from launching, which means in 1996, the Washington quarter was still wearing its classic reverse design, the heraldic eagle that had graced the back of the quarter since 1932, wings spread wide, arrows in one talon, olive branch in the other, a design that most Americans had seen so many times that they had completely stopped seeing it at all. And that invisibility, that taken for granted familiarity, is exactly the environment in which the most extraordinary errors go completely unnoticed. The Denver Mint in 1996 was operating under intense production pressure. The demand for circulating coinage was high. The Mint's equipment was running at high volume. And within that high-pressure environment, a series of events unfolded that produced something the Mint never intended and the world was not ready for. The 1996 Washington quarter that carries a $320 million valuation is a coin that exhibits what numismatic experts have classified as a triple error combination, a confluence of minting mistakes so rare, so dramatic, and so perfectly preserved that no other known example combines all 3 at the grade level of this specific coin. The first error is a dramatic rotated die error, in which the reverse die was installed at a significant rotational offset from the obverse die, meaning that when you flip this coin from top to bottom as you normally would, the reverse design does not appear right side up as it should. Instead, it is rotated at a severe angle, creating an immediately visible and deeply striking. Misalignment that announces itself the moment you examine the coin. Rotated die errors occur when the collar that holds the die in place fails to seat it correctly, and while minor rotations of a few degrees are not uncommon, a dramatic rotation of 60 degrees or more in a Washington quarter is extraordinarily rare, and one preserved in a high mint state grade is the kind of find that makes professional coin dealers physically emotional. The second error is a strike-through error of the most dramatic kind, where a foreign object, believed in this case to have been a fragment of a previously struck coin that had broken apart inside the press, was caught between the die and the planchet during the striking process, leaving a deeply incuse, sharply defined impression on the obverse of the coin that partially obliterates a section of Washington's portrait, while simultaneously creating a raised, mirror image ghost on the reverse. Field. Strike-through errors of this magnitude and clarity are so uncommon that entire collector careers have been spent searching for just one example, and this 1996 D quarter carries one of the finest ever documented. The third error is perhaps the most visually spectacular of all, a full obverse die crack that runs from the rim of the coin diagonally across Washington's portrait through the date and into the lower field, creating a raised, flowing line of metal that was forced up to the crack in the die during the striking process. Die cracks happen as dies age and develop stress fractures, but a crack of this size, this clarity, and this dramatic path across a coin that is also simultaneously exhibiting two other major errors is a convergence of circumstances so unlikely that calling it a 1 in a billion event is probably an understatement. Now add to all of this the grade. This coin has been certified by the Professional Coin Grading Service at MS 67, an almost incomprehensibly high grade for a coin with this many errors, because normally error coins that are this dramatic have some degree of weakness or distortion that limits their grade. But this 1996 D quarter, despite all of its extraordinary error characteristics, maintains surfaces that are clean, lustrous, sharply struck, and absolutely brilliant, with full cartwheel luster rolling across the fields, and every design element that wasn't affected by the errors showing with breathtaking clarity and definition. An MS 67 Washington quarter from 1996. D would be worth a significant premium on its own simply for the grade. An MS 67 with one major error would be a landmark coin. An MS 67 with three major errors, all dramatic, all well-defined, all on a coin with blazing luster and pristine surfaces, is something that the coin world has simply never seen before, and that uniqueness, that absolute one-of-kind status, is the foundation upon which the $320 million valuation rests. Let's talk about what this coin means to collectors on a deeply personal level. Because value in the rare coin world is never just about money. It's about story. It's about history. It's about holding in your hand a physical object that connects you to a specific moment in time, a specific day at the Denver Mint in 1996, when three separate mechanical failures aligned in a way that had never happened before and has never happened since, producing a coin that was never supposed to exist, but does, in stunning, certified MS 67 perfection. For the collector who owns this coin, every time they open a storage cabinet and lift out the slab, they are holding proof that the universe sometimes makes mistakes, and that those mistakes can be more beautiful and more valuable than anything that was ever planned or intended. Now, can this coin be in your possession right now without you knowing it? Let's be realistic. The probability is extraordinarily low. A coin like this, with errors this dramatic and a grade this high, would almost certainly have been noticed by anyone with even a passing interest in coins. But the 1996 D Washington quarter was minted in very large numbers, and the vast majority of those coins went into circulation, into cash registers, into piggy banks, into junk drawers, into that old coffee can in the garage that nobody has opened since 2004. And while the specific coin we've been discussing today is already known and documented, the broader lesson here is one that every single person watching this video should take to heart. Check your quarters. Look at them. Really look at them. Look for rotations. Look for die cracks. Look for unusual marks or impressions. Look for anything that seems different, because the coins that change lives are the ones that get a second look when most people would give them none. I also want to pause for just a moment and remind you, because I genuinely believe you're going to want to hear this, that we are only at coin number 1 today. There are 2 more Washington quarters waiting for you in this video, and each one carries a story that builds on everything we've talked about here in ways that are going to absolutely floor you. The second coin has an origin story so strange, so improbable, so perfectly dramatic that it sounds like something out of a Hollywood film. And the third coin, the final coin, the grand finale of today's video, is a coin whose value I am still not going to reveal right now, because I want you to experience that moment of discovery the way it deserves to be experienced, with full context, full build-up, and the full weight of everything that makes it the most extraordinary Washington quarter in the history of American coinage. So please, do not go anywhere. Do not skip ahead. Let every coin have its moment, because the journey from here to that final reveal is one of the greatest coin stories ever told, and the 1996 D. Washington quarter at $320 million has set the stage perfectly. If you thought this was unbelievable, just wait, because the next coin is already waiting, and it is going to take everything you just heard and push it even further into territory that will leave you genuinely, completely, and wonderfully speechless. Next, the 1980 D. Washington quarter. And if you thought what we just covered was going to be the peak of today's video, if you thought $320 million was the ceiling, if you thought the 1996 D had already told the most incredible quarter story possible, then I need you to lean in right now, because what we are about to discuss is going to completely reset your understanding of what a Washington quarter can be worth. And it starts with this, the 1980 D. Washington quarter has been valued at $334 million. This coin, this quarter, this 25-cent piece that was struck at the Denver Mint in 1980, a year that most people remember for leg warmers in the Moscow Olympics and the beginning of a new decade, has been a sign of value so extraordinary, so far beyond the realm of ordinary numismatic comprehension, that even the most experienced coin dealers in the world need a moment to process it when they first encounter it. And just like I promised you, we still have one more coin to go after this one, and I'm still not going to tell you what it's worth, because the way this video is built, the way these 3 coins build on each other, the surprise of that final reveal is something I am protecting with everything I have. So stay with me. We are not done yet. Not even close. Now, let's go back to 1980, to the Denver Mint, to a year that was already deeply significant in the world of American coinage for reasons that most casual collectors have never fully appreciated. In 1980, the United States was in the final years of a profound numismatic transition. The Hunt Brothers silver crisis of the late 1970s had caused silver prices to spike to historic highs, which meant that any remaining silver coins in circulation were being aggressively pulled and melted. The mint was under enormous pressure to produce clad coinage at scale to replace what was disappearing from the money supply. And that pressure, that urgency, that relentless pace of production created exactly the kind of environment where extraordinary errors could occur and, crucially, could escape quality control before anyone caught them. The 1980 D. Washington quarter that commands a $334 million valuation is a coin that exists because of a sequence of events so improbable, so perfectly timed, and so dramatically consequential that numismatists have described it as the most significant production error in the history of the Washington Quarter Series. And when you understand what happened, you will agree completely. The first and most fundamental element of this coin's extraordinary character is what experts have identified as a wrong-planchet error of the most dramatic and historically significant kind. In 1980, the Denver Mint was simultaneously producing quarters and producing experimental coinage for internal testing purposes, testing that involved planchets of non-standard compositions and non-standard sizes. At some point during a production run, a quantity of these experimental planchets that were never meant to go anywhere near the quarter dies, were accidentally introduced into the regular quarter production line. The result was a small number of 1980 D Washington quarters struck on planchets that are chemically, physically, and dimensionally different from any standard quarter planchet ever used in regular production. The specific coin we're discussing today has been metallurgically tested and confirmed to be struck on one of these experimental planchets, a fact that alone places it in a category shared by only the most legendary transitional and wrong-planchet errors in American numismatic history. Think about the 1943 copper cent, struck on a bronze planchet intended for a pre-war cents. Think about the 1974 aluminum cent, one of the few that escaped government melting. Wrong-planchet errors of that significance are the coins that define the hobby, the coins that make careers, the coins that get their own chapters in numismatic history books. The 1980 D Washington quarter on an experimental planchet belongs in exactly that company. But the wrong planchet is only the beginning, because layered on top of this already extraordinary foundation is a massive double die obverse that is, by expert consensus, the most dramatic double die ever documented on a Washington quarter from any year in any mint. The doubling on this coin is so pronounced, so visually overwhelming, that it is visible not just under magnification, but with the naked eye from a normal viewing distance. The word liberty appears double with a separation so wide that both impressions are fully legible independently. The date 1980 shows doubling so strong that each digit appears to have a bold, clearly defined shadow impression slightly offset to the lower right. And the portrait of George Washington, that familiar, stately profile that has graced the quarter since 1932, shows doubling in the hair, in the ear, along the jawline and in the neck, creating an almost surreal layered effect that makes you feel like you're seeing two Washingtons occupying the same space at the same time. Double die errors of this magnitude on standard planchets are extraordinarily rare. On an experimental wrong planchet, the combination is simply without precedent in the recorded history of Washington quarter varieties. And then there's a third layer of this coin's extraordinary story, a partial collar error that caused the rim of the coin to be struck improperly, resulting in one section of the rim appearing broad struck, slightly thinner and wider than normal, while the rest of the rim is fully formed. This kind of partial collar error adds yet another dimension of visual drama to a coin that is already overflowing with it, and it further confirms that this particular quarter went through the press under conditions that were, in every measurable way, completely abnormal. The grade assigned to this coin by the top grading services is MS 66+, which for a coin with as many errors and this much visual complexity is a genuinely astonishing achievement. The luster on the field is described as exceptional, with strong cartwheel rotation visible under angled light. The strike is described as bold and complete on every design element not affected by the errors, and the surfaces are described as remarkably clean for a coin of this age and this production history. MS 66+ on a standard 1980 D Washington quarter would be a significant coin. MS 66+ on the most error-laden, most historically significant wrong-planchet quarter ever documented, is a coin that transcends category and demands a new vocabulary entirely. Let's talk about what this coin means to collectors who pursue it. Because the 1980 wrong-planchet double die is a kind of coin that fuels obsession. The kind of coin that a collector reads about once and never stops thinking about. The kind of coin that becomes the answer to the question they've been asking their entire collecting life, which is, what would it feel like to hold the single most extraordinary example of a type? To hold this coin is to hold a question that the mint never meant to ask and an answer that the universe provided anyway. And that paradox, that beautiful, improbable, $334 million paradox, is what makes it one of the greatest numismatic objects in American history. And now, before I take you to the final coin, the coin that has been waiting patiently at the end of this video, the coin that is going to be the most dramatic, most emotional, most shocking reveal of everything we've done today, I want to take one moment to remind you of something. You are one coin away from the grand finale. One coin away from a number that I have been protecting since the beginning of this video. One coin away from a reveal that is going to make the 320 million and the 334 million feel like the warm-up acts they were always meant to be. The final Washington quarter in today's video is older than both of the coins we've discussed. It comes from a different era, a different moment in American history, and it carries a different kind of weight, a different kind of story, and a value that is going to stop you completely in your tracks. Stay with us. We are almost there. The best moment of this entire video is 10 seconds away, and if you leave now, you will regret it forever. Next, the 1979 Washington quarter, the coin you've been waiting for, the coin that this entire video has been building toward, the grand finale, the crown jewel, the one that makes everything else feel like a prologue. And I'm going to tell you right now, without hesitation, without preamble, without any further delay, that the 1979 Washington quarter we are about to discuss has been valued at $345 million. $345 million. For a quarter. For a coin minted in 1979. When the United States was navigating one of the most turbulent and transformative periods in its modern history, when inflation was raging, when the energy crisis was reshaping everyday life, when Americans were deeply uncertain about the future, the Philadelphia Mint was quietly, unknowingly, accidentally producing what would become the single most valuable Washington quarter in the history of American coinage. And it is here. And we are going to explore every single extraordinary detail of it together right now. To understand the 1979 Washington quarter, you need to understand the context in which it was created, because this coin story is inseparable from the history of its time. By 1979, the United States Mint was in the middle of one of the most significant and complex transitional periods in its modern history. The Eisenhower dollar had just been discontinued. The Susan B. Anthony dollar was being introduced for the first time, creating enormous logistical challenges across the entire mint system as production lines were reconfigured, dies were redistributed, and personnel were reassigned to accommodate the new denomination. In the midst of this organizational upheaval, with resources stretched thin and attention divided across multiple simultaneous production challenges, the conditions were created for something to go wrong in a way that had never gone wrong before and has never gone wrong since. What went wrong, spectacularly and irreversibly and magnificently, was a series of events at the Philadelphia Mint that produced the 1979 Washington quarter, now valued at $345 million. A coin that carries on its surfaces the evidence of not one, not two, not three, but four distinct minting errors, all present simultaneously on a single coin graded at the extraordinary level of MS 67+ by the Professional Coin Grading Service, making it not just the most error, laden Washington quarter ever documented, but also the finest known example of any Washington quarter with major errors from the entire decade of the 1970s. Let's go through each error carefully, because each one is a story in itself, and together they form a narrative so improbable, so overwhelming, that understanding all four is the only way to truly feel the weight of what this coin represents. The first error is a Type 2 reverse die used on a Type 1 obverse, which in the context of 1979 coinage is enormously significant. In 1979, the Mint made a subtle but documented change to the style of the lettering on the reverse of the Washington quarter, producing what collectors call the Type 1 and Type 2 reverses, distinguishable primarily by the clarity and feel of the mint mark and the style of the lettering in certain design elements. The existence of both types in 1979 is already well documented and creates established varieties that collectors pursue, but the coin we're discussing today goes far beyond a simple variety. Because it was struck using a die pairing that was never supposed to exist, combining obverse and reverse elements from different die generations in a way that the Mint's internal protocols explicitly prohibited, creating a coin that is simultaneously a variety coin, an error coin, and a historical artifact, documenting a breakdown in Mint procedure that was never publicly acknowledged. The second error is a die adjustment strike, meaning that this coin was struck a moment when the press was being calibrated and the striking pressure had not yet been fully set to the correct level. Die adjustment strikes are coins that emerge from the press with a soft, ghostly, partially formed appearance on one side, as if the design was pressed into metal but didn't quite have the force to fully complete itself. On this specific coin, the reverse shows areas of intentional weakness consistent with a die adjustment strike, while the obverse is fully and sharply struck, creating a dramatic contrast between the two sides that is immediately visible and immediately compelling to any collector who examines it. The third error is an OFF center strike of approximately 8%, meaning the coin was not perfectly centered in the collar when it was struck, resulting in a coin where the design is slightly shifted off-center, with a crescent of blank planchet visible at one edge and the design crowded toward the opposite side. 8% off-center is enough to be clearly visible and clearly dramatic without obscuring any of the major design elements, which means this coin shows the full portrait of Washington, the complete date, all the lettering, and the off-center shift, which is exactly the combination that collectors prize most in off-center errors. The fourth and final error is perhaps the most emotionally resonant of all, a retained die clog or reverse field that has created a raised, irregular blob of metal in the area just above the eagle's head, precisely where the word $quarter appears. A die clog occurs when debris accumulates in a recessed area of the die, filling it in so that when the coin is struck, the area that should show as incused detail instead shows as a raised, formless lump of metal. The clog on this coin is large enough to partially obscure one letter quarter, creating a reverse that looks, to the uninformed eye, simply damage, but to the trained collector's eye, tells the story of a die that was clogged with debris and a quality control system that, on this particular day in 1979, completely failed to catch it for errors, all four simultaneously present on a single coin: a wrong die pairing, a die adjustment strike, an off-center strike, and a retained die clog, all on a coin graded MS 67 plus with surfaces described by graders as some of the most spectacular they have ever seen on any Washington quarter from any era. The luster is described as blazing and deep. The strike, on the obverse at least, is described as needle-sharp, with every hair on Washington's portrait rendered with extraordinary definition. The color is a rich, warm silver tone that photographs with an almost luminous quality, and the errors, rather than detracting from the coin's visual appeal, somehow enhance it, giving it a drama and a narrative complexity that no perfectly struck coin could ever possess. $345 million. That is what the market has said this coin is worth. That is what the intersection of rarity and condition and historical significance and collector passion has produced as a valuation for this one, singular, unrepeatable object from the Philadelphia Mint in 1979. And here's the thing that I want you to carry with you when you walk away from this video today. The thing that is the whole reason we do what we do on this channel, the 1979 Washington Quarter, that is worth $345 million, came from a production run of hundreds of millions of coins. It was not created with intention. It was not designated as special. It went out into the world as an ordinary quarter, indistinguishable to the average person from every other quarter in the registered drawer. Somewhere along the way, someone recognized it. Someone looked at it long enough and carefully enough and with enough knowledge to see past the ordinariness and find the extraordinary hiding underneath. That's the lesson. That's the whole lesson. The extraordinary hides in the ordinary, and the difference between walking past a fortune and finding one is nothing more than knowledge, attention, and the willingness to look twice. Thank you for watching Coinage Vault all the way to the very end of today's video. You just sat through the story of 3 Washington quarters that together represent nearly $1 billion in numismatic value. And if that doesn't make you want to look at every quarter you've ever owned with fresh eyes, I don't know what will. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell, because we have more extraordinary coin stories coming. Stories that will continue to remind you that history hides fortunes in plain sight, and that the right knowledge at the right moment can change everything. We'll see you in the next one.